I don't know. It'll be interesting to see, obviously, over the course of this season, how he's going to look because, last year he only made, I believe it was 11 starts. So you don't really know exactly how he's going to fare as this season progresses and as he pitches more innings and logs more innings. And, how does he fare in June? How does he fare in July? How does he fare in August? And, a lot of times you do see maybe a pitcher early in his career has success, and then, maybe hitters figure him out, and you see how he adjusts to that. And the one thing that I can say, though, is throughout the course of his career, and it's been a short career, he's been great. Like, he has been great, and I think these two they were the big ones that I was kind of looking out for this season, and they've been big so far through the first 9 games. So I definitely think that has been something that's a strong sign for this team, because you know what you're going to get out of Judge. You know what you're going to get out of Free. You know when healthy, Stanton's going to give you his 30 homers. So I think Rice, Schlittler, and, Jazz Chisholm, who's not off to a strong start, and we'll get to him, he's in a contract year. But I think the biggest thing with Chisholm is, and this is something that, fans haven't had really anything to grasp for months, because you get bounced in October and then you have to wait, and then, World Baseball Classic, spring training. So, there is a lot to still have in terms of this sport, but there's no actual meaningful baseball being played between November to most of March. So, it's very easy, and I think it's fair for some fans to maybe jump on guys very early who aren't producing, because you want to see results. You want to see results right away. And for Chisholm, a player who it's a big year. It's a big year for him individually because it's a contract year. So you got to figure, this is a guy who was 30-30 a year ago and also missed some time. So this could be a season in which, and he's even said it, he's aiming for 50-50. That probably a little unrealistic, but I definitely think another 30-30 season could be in store. I don't see why not. I mean, his swing plays well in that stadium. I think he's good when he's on the base paths. Last year, towards the end, I think a lot of that maybe has to do with the injury that he suffered, midway in the season. He kind of stopped running. But, this is a really, really big offensive anchor in this Yankee lineup. And, he's kind of another bridge between Stanton, Rice, and the bottom of the lineup. And I definitely think the bottom of the lineup, I think, is where people have some fair criticism, because, throughout the course of his career in Colorado, Ryan McMahon was never really a hitter. Like Anthony Volpe, we've been waiting for him to really put it all together offensively. And, it's kind of interesting because as a prospect, the billing on Austin Wells was, well, hey, he can hit, but we're going to see if he can maybe do it behind the dish. And it's kind of interesting because his major league career up to this point has been good behind the dish as a defensive catcher, but you don't really get a lot in terms of offense. So it's kind of interesting where the billing prior to the start of his career almost is kind of the opposite from what we've been able to see from him as a Yankee. So it's kind of interesting how that works sometimes, but I think the biggest, issue with this Yankee team, and you could have some issues with some bullpen arms, because Jake Bird, that was yesterday. They had a lead, and then he came in and he looked ineffective, and he looked ineffective throughout large parts of last season. And that kind of felt like part of the issue with the Yankees last year, too. It kind of just felt like, you're a pretty well-oiled machine. This is a good team with good starting pitching and high-end offensive hitters at the top and middle portion of the lineup. But it kind of just felt like bottom of the lineup and bullpen. And you don't have Devin Williams. You don't have Luke Weaver. So a lot of the guys in prior seasons, Clay Holmes hasn't been with the Yankees now for 2 years in a row. So a lot of the guys that, prior to this season, you can at least blame it on, well, no Williams. Now it's Bednar. No Weaver. So now we have, an actual, like Doval. But I think the biggest thing with having really good relievers is, when they're just a tick off. When you're a tick off as a starter, you can at least kind of navigate through 5 or 6 if you figure it out, because you at least have the time in your role to figure it out. But as a reliever, if you're just a tick off, that's the difference between a 1-2-3 inning, or that's the difference between a scoreless inning and maybe giving up a couple of hard hit balls or walking batters. And that's really problematic as a reliever, because then that kind of opens up the door for, now all of a sudden it's first and second. And now, you miss a pitch, so 2-run score instead of that just being a double with 2 outs. So, there's a lot at play with this Yankee bullpen. And I definitely think that there's, some cause for concern, albeit it's still just 9 games in. They're 7-2. So there is a lot to like. There's a lot to like about this Yankee team. And I think that should be the driving home point. We're 9 games in. The Yankees have won every single series so far. They swept the Giants. And, the Giants haven't looked good so far in 2026. But, this was a team that had high hopes. They hired Tony Vitello, and, you add some guys offensively, and Devers there in his first full season. So, there's a lot to like, at least going into the season over in San Francisco. So that was a good team. That should have been a good team. And the Yankees took care of business in that first series. Seattle, a team that, took Toronto to the ALCS Game 7 last year. That's another really good team with good pitching. And you win that series. And, the Yankees did start well last season. So, this isn't just, they're 7-2, so this is different because this is a different team. Like, it's pretty much the same team. Like, if you take a look at this team in August or September of last year compared to now, outside of a couple of bullpen arms, like, it is by and large the exact same team. And I think that there were definitely some fans that had issues with that. They had issues with running it back and not making some alterations and not being aggressive to go grab a Murakami or go grab a Kyle Tucker. But, Hal Steinbrenner has kind of, he picks and chooses when he wants to spend his money. And, I think a lot of fans maybe have some pushback on that because the defending champs and the team that has just won 2 straight, they spend money. Like, they spend money more than anybody. And I know it's not, necessarily a direct correlation for why they win. There's definitely more reasons for why the Dodgers are as good as they are. But I think the thing that you have to realize is, this is a Yankee team. They're not going to spend the way the Dodgers do. Neither will the Mets. No team is going to be up in that region of spending. They're just not. So you have to get a little creative. You have to find ways to maximize talent. And, I think the Yankees have. I think the Blue Jays have. I think the Mets have. I think the Phillies have. Now, could all these teams maybe be more aggressive to not get outbid by the Dodgers? Well, sure. But, at the end of the day, if you're steadfast on not spending or I guess not going over a certain amount, you're not really going to not adhere to that. And why wouldn't you? If you're a billionaire and you feel that it's not worth it losing out on money if there's no guarantee to win, that's just not going to be something they're going to do. And a lot of people have given Steinbrenner and Cashman some pushback. And I get it because they haven't won since 2009. So it's been a tough drought. They didn't get to a World Series in the 2010s. They've only been to 1 so far in the 2020s. It feels like there's been constant ALDS exit, ALCS exit. So it's definitely a frustrating, last almost 20 years or so. But, I think gone are the days where this is a team that just kind of waltzes through the playoffs and has the best pitchers and the best hitters that all execute in October and all come up with clutch hits and, get timely outs and get out of jams. And, this isn't a team. This isn't the dynasty of the late 90s and early 2000s. This is a team that is really good, really competitive. And one thing that you can't say that they don't constantly put out the best product on the field. That's something that's not that is objectively factual, that they put out a team that is capable of winning the World Series every single year. Now they just haven't, but they're capable, consistently capable. A lot of teams and a lot of successful teams maybe have a couple years where, they tank, they blow it up for about 3, 4, 5 years and, they only win about 70 games, 65 games. They're trying to rebuild and retool. But you got to give the Yankees a lot of credit. Even when they're in a quote-unquote retool mode, they still win about 85, 86 games. So, one of these years, you got to figure that it'll break through and result in a World Series win. And they've been really successful throughout the course of the last couple of years. I think, early in the Judge tenure, I think it was a lot of, Aaron Judge is great, and we don't really need to build a lot around him, or a lot of what they were building around him was just inadequate. It was Donaldson, it was Kiner Falefa. There just wasn't a lot there with Harrison Bader too. So I definitely think this Yankee roster is deeper than we've seen, even as little as 3, 4, 5 years ago. It's not the team that we saw back in 2017 or 2019, but this is a team that it's 7-2. There's still some things to worry about, but at the end of the day, it could be a lot worse. It could be a lot worse if people really weren't hitting, or if the pitching really wasn't doing what we thought they could have so far this season. But it's been a lot more good. Again, there's still some things to worry about, but it's been a lot of good so far. And, we'll see if they keep it going. They welcome the A's to town this week. So, tough, frisky team, the A's. They have some good hitters, so we'll see if that pitching kind of stays strong. After the most successful Excellent Egg Hunt in 107.7 The Bronx history, we want to give a second rider Bronx the opportunity to win a cruise to the Bahamas. And all you have to do to win is make a sandwich. It's really that simple. So what are you waiting for? Get in the kitchen, get creative, and enter 107.7 The Bronx Build the Ultimate Bronkwich Contest. Develop Ryder's new signature sandwich in your kitchen and reap the rewards. A Royal Caribbean cruise for 2 to the Bahamas from Josh Harry Travel. Go to 1077thebronx.com/buildthebronkwich right now to enter your sandwich creation. The deadline to enter has been extended to Sunday, April 12th. So get those entries in. We'll be back with more from the Tom Hill Show after these underwriting announcements on your 3-time 2026 Intercollegiate Broadcasting Systems Media Award winner, 107.7 The Bronx.
There's just something about Rider University
that has allowed me to thrive as a student in and out of the classroom.
Succeed in my chosen career as one of 65,000 Rider alumni.
I can't quite put my finger on it.
Maybe it's the Rider faculty who have helped me to unlock my true potential.
Or the over 125 student clubs and organizations that allowed me to become the natural-born leader I really am.
Or the administrative staff who encouraged me to step out of my comfort zone and develop into a
Rider believes in me. Don't just take it from us. Take it from
rock to the commencement stage, there's a new episode the first Sunday of every month with encore episodes weekly at 8 a.m. Or watch the videos on our website at 1077thebronx.com/alumni in action. Tune in to hear how Rider alumni are making their mark with new episodes every Sunday at 8 a.m. One story at a time. This is Alumni in Action.
1077 The Bronx, very exciting news. Our new video stream is officially live. Now you can listen to The Bronx on air, online, and on app. Now watch your favorite student shows live on the Bronx YouTube channel and Facebook at 1077 The Bronx, including What's Next Sports, Talk of the Town Sports, Bronx After Hours, The Concast, Cliff Notes, and Wake Up Rider. Keep it tuned into The Bronx to listen to and watch your favorite student shows. Welcome back to the Tom Hill Show on your 5-time National Association of Broadcasters Marconi Radio Award nominated station, 1077 The Bronx. Been discussing a lot of, we've been kind of keeping it very Yankee so far throughout the first 30 minutes or so, but I kind of wanted to get this off my chest because it's been something that I was curious coming into this season to see how it would play out. And I think this ABS system in baseball it's been unbelievable. I mean, you really cannot get any better than this. A lot of times you see them implement stuff and you're worried about how they're going to work out the kinks, and it sometimes goes a little weird, or it's kind of wonky, or it's not very natural into the sport. And the way they infuse it's a little odd because they have to, but I think the way that this ABS system has worked, it's worked like a charm so far. It really has. I mean, it really has. When you really boil down the fact that not only is it better for the players because it keeps at bats alive, or it allows for pitchers to stay in counts and then make their pitches. It allows for the most accurate or almost a complete accuracy at the plate. But, I also kind of just like the fact that it's convenient. Like, it's really convenient. Like 2-0. There's one that's, maybe low. You tap your helmet. You look up on the big screen. It takes maybe about 10 seconds. Maybe 10 seconds. And I think that, for years, everyone in the space has been clamoring for robot umps or some sort of way to hold these umpires accountable. And I understand it's a tough job. It's really hard. You're back there for 3 hours in the hot heat. You have to see, behind a mask, you have to see pitches that cut and dip and fade and are 90 to 100 miles an hour, or sometimes they just have unbelievable movement. And, you're dealing with, 25, 30, 40,000 people all in the stands, and it's a long game, and it's sometimes those games go 12, 13, 14 innings. So I get it. It is not an easy profession, but, neither is playing. So, I do think that if we're going to kind of err on the side of something, it should be to try to get it as accurate as possible. And yes, there are some instances in which, maybe certain umpires feel like, they're getting kind of embarrassed or humiliated. But at the end of the day, wouldn't you want, if you're a business like all these teams are, wouldn't you want the most accurate report of what's going on out on the field? Like, wouldn't you want to see, okay, that pitch missed just off the edge. That pitch maybe caught the corner. Now, I'm sure there are definitely going to be ways to maybe make it a little bit more, I guess, logical. Because I think some people could maybe think, oh, well, that's a ball. Well, but it kind of caught like part of the zone, so it's a strike. And then obviously, everybody has their own strike zone because not everyone's the same height. And not every umpire is the same umpire. So that's why certain umpires would always get the billing of maybe pitcher-friendly. Some are hitter-friendly. Some give the high strike. Some don't. Some give the corners. Some don't. Because no two people are the exact same. So, there's going to be some discrepancies. But, I kind of was interested to see how this would shape out. And so far, it's been awesome. It's been about as awesome as you can get it. I mean, there are certain things that this league implements, and there are certain things that all leagues implement that I think, I don't know if I like that. I think it might distract certain viewers, or I thought, at first, back in 2014, I thought the challenge was great because I think just having it be all the eye of the umpire, I thought was a little silly. I thought that, there are going to be certain times where, you look and you call him safe when he was really out, or you call him out when he was really safe. And, I think that the league has also wanted to maybe benefit the offense, which is why a lot of the rules over the last couple of years, the bigger bags, the pitch clock, the disengagement violations, like you can only throw over now 2 times. A lot of that is kind of catering to the offense. Now, I think this, to me, it really just, it caters to both of them. Because now a pitcher thinks, I can get back into account. 3-1, pitch just misses, catcher taps his head. Now it's 3-2, boom, you're back into the count. And it has such a spillover effect, too, because, now all of a sudden, let's say a pitcher throws 10 pitches and you think he gets called strike 3 on a 2-2 pitch, and now, boom, the hitter challenges. Now it's 3-2. That could be the difference between throwing 12 pitches in an inning as opposed to 18 or 22, or, it could add about 5 to 10 or even more pitches in an inning, and it just completely changes the complexion of the game. And I think, doing it with accuracy, I think, is the biggest thing. If you do it with, if it's implementing a rule that's just maybe changing the fortunes for one side, like the bigger bags would, or like the disengagements would, I definitely think that while that is big and while that can be helpful, I think this is the biggest thing. And this is something that the league has been trying to weave in, I would say, over the last 10 years or so, because why not try to err on the side of accuracy? And I think that, this sport has been kind of under fire, but these last couple of years, I think they've done a really good job at trying to build it up. And I think that's why the ratings are up. And obviously there's certain players that are large parts of that. And yeah, I mean, that was kind of my little spiel on ABS. I mean, watching it, there'd be some times where, I think that maybe certain players are maybe a little too hesitant to pull the trigger. And obviously there's going to be, a bit of a feeling out period. But I think, if it's 2-1 and there's a pitch that you think's on the edge and they call it a strike, tap your helmet. Like 3-1 and 2-2 is huge. It's huge. Like 1-1 and 2-0, those counts are so completely different. So completely different. So, and if you know that you're absolutely right, because you get 2 challenges, and then if you get both wrong, you have no more. But if you get them right, then you just keep on challenging and challenging and challenging. It's basically just, you get 2 tries, and if you keep on getting them right, you just keep your tries. So I think it's big time. I think this is awesome. And I really do think that, maybe at some point, I don't know when, maybe in 10 years or so, 15, maybe we may not even need an umpire behind the catcher. Maybe it'll just be a situation where you're going to pitch. There's going to be a set zone with a bunch of data because it tracks who's up, who's on the mound. I don't know. I definitely think that we could be moving into that space. But that was my little spiel on that, and it's been great so far. And I wanted to kind of, touch on some other teams throughout the course of this season, and still very early. And I think the thing that we have to realize, too, is at the end of the day, and as much as they're great, and they've been great so far, the Dodgers, they've been unbelievable. They're 7-2. They win a bunch of these games early. They just smoked Washington on the road. They scored 31 runs in that series. But I think the thing we got to realize with this team is, and this is what makes this sport very interesting. And I think that's kind of why, even though there maybe are some people that are a little on the fence about consuming it this season, and I get that because you have the impending doom of, not getting a deal done in 2027 and whatever the case may be there. But I think one of the things that is keeping the intrigue for this sport alive is the fact that it kind of has that crapshoot nature. It kind of has that nature of, oh, well, that team is great, but they may not win it. Maybe they suffer an injury or a couple of injuries, and then boom. You never know. You never know. Yes, they added with Diaz and Tucker, and they're still great, and they're firing on all cylinders, and they'll probably win about 100 games, at least 95. So, yes, if a lot of their big premier pieces stay healthy, they're going to have a ton of success. But I think the thing that you have to realize, just with this sport is they've won 2 in a row, and it shows how great they've been, but they were on the ropes against Toronto. Like, they were on the ropes against San Diego the year prior. Now, obviously, nobody in the NL, like, Philly pushed them a little bit in the NLDS, but Milwaukee kind of just laid down and died. But, this is a team that, while great, I still think, and still, again, very early into this season, just 3 series in, we have to realize that this could be a team, this could be a year, and while I do think it's their best team roster-wise, it's the sport of baseball. Like, this isn't basketball or football where you can load up talent and have a ton of success. And by and large, if you are the more talented team in those 2 sports, you're going to win. I mean, that's just the bottom line. If you are the more talented team in those sports, especially basketball, and we've seen a lot of times, like the Warriors with Kevin Durant and Curry, and the minute he was inserted into that team, he was unbelievable. And they were great, and they just waltzed right through. Beat the Cavs the next year. And then it took, a bunch of injuries to occur for Toronto to beat them in 2019. So, again, this is not a sport that lends itself to just otherworldly dominance. And I think that's big. And I think that's why there's some intrigue, because look at a Mets, look at maybe a Phillies, look at a Yankees in the AL, look at a Blue Jays in the AL. Who's to say Boston's not great? Who's to say, another top team, San Diego? What if they're great? What if Seattle pieces it all together and they maybe make a World Series? Like, could someone come out of either of the Centrals? Maybe. Probably not, but maybe. So, again, we're still very early into this season, and there is a lot to like. There is a lot to like so far with Major League Baseball, and I like what they're doing with the ABS. I really liked what they did a couple of years ago, speeding the games up. Put in the pitch clock. Don't have 3.5-hour games. Have 2.5-hour games. I like that a lot better. I like the bigger bases. I maybe am not the biggest fan of the disengagement rules, because I do think that you shouldn't be clipping what a pitcher is able to do in terms of holding runners on. I think there's kind of like a cat and mouse in that, where I think it's kind of the, it's like a mini chess match within the game, and I don't know if I really like kind of screwing that up. But so far this season, there's been a lot to like, and I think when you take a look at some of these teams who were pegged to be good, they've been good so far. And again, you just don't know who's going to win. You don't know who's going to win. You don't really truly know who's going to come out of the AL. A lot of people, and I was included in this last year, a lot of people thought, well, the Blue Jays, they're good, but we've been kind of waiting for them to really pop. And I didn't think much of them. I really didn't. Like, after 2024, I kind of thought that was more of what they were. I kind of thought they missed their window. They won't extend Guerrero. And I thought that was more of what they were, as opposed to the team that we did see last year take the Dodgers to Game 7 of the World Series, and also had ample opportunities in that game and in that series to win it. And I think that's kind of why, I keep coming back to this sport. My team, I'm a Yankee fan, they're great consistently year after year. So there's a lot of that too. Whereas, maybe if you're a fan of a Pirates or an A's or a Rockies or a White Sox, there's not a lot to really build towards, because you just know you're not going to have a lot of success. And your ownership won't spend to have a lot of success. But I think the biggest thing that we have to realize is, the Dodgers, while great, again, not a team that is just, it's not a complete shoo-in that they're going to be in the World Series and win it. That's just not the case with this sport. And I think that's why it's so great. We don't know. We really don't know. It's still very early, and we still have a long way to go. A lot of season left, but we've been kind of waiting for this. The World Baseball Classic was a nice kind of foreshadowing and precursor for this season, and it was a really, really exciting World Baseball Classic. And now, so far this season, it's been great. So, and enjoy it, and try to enjoy it, because you don't know what 2027 holds. Like, who knows what's going to happen in terms of getting a deal done. But, so far there's a lot to like. It's not every day we get to be a hero, so we're giving you 2 days to be a hero to 3 people all as one time. Announcing 107.7 The Bronx annual Spring for Life blood drive, Wednesday and Thursday, April 8th and 9th in the BLC Cavallo Room. Everyone who attempts to donate blood will get pair of tickets to a Trenton Thunder game or passes to Sky Zone in Hamilton. At the end of the drive, 2 lucky Bronx will each score a $100 Visa gift card for being our hero. To schedule your appointment to donate blood, go to our website at 1077thebronx.com/springforlife. We'll be back with more from the Tom Hill Show after these underwriting announcements. While you're waiting for the return of my show, follow The Bronx on Instagram at 1077 The Bronx and on TikTok at 1077 The Bronx WRRC.
This is your Rider News Roundup. This is your Rider News Roundup.
And this is your Rider News Roundup.
On Saturdays at 11 a.m., you can get the views.
Of different games for the child and parent to play, a $50 DoorDash gift card, and more. Every donation made goes to creating a bag of hope to give each child who receives one the courage, confidence, and hope to beat their cancer diagnosis. Go to friendsofaFeather.org to give a child a Barb's bag of hope. That's friendsofaFeather.org.
We've extended the deadline to enter 1077 The Bronx first ever Build the Ultimate Bronkwitch contest. You now have until Sunday, April 12th. To be the Bronc who creates Ryder's new signature sandwich to be served at Muller's Pub and on the Yo Cuz Yellow Food Trailer. And we'll send you and a guest on a Royal Caribbean cruise for 2 to the Bahamas, courtesy of Josh Harry Travel. However you slice it, the contest eats Bronx. Remember, the deadline to enter to win a cruise has been extended to Sunday, April 12th. Go to 1077therock.com/buildabronquage to enter your sandwich. Welcome back to the Tom Hill Show on the Princeton Review's 18th ranked best college radio station, 1077 The Bronx. And we've been kind of, talking a lot of baseball here so far on a Monday morning. And early April, the season just kicked off a little over a week ago. And could be I would say it's the last season that you can kind of thoroughly enjoy without maybe some fear about, what do they do next season in terms of getting a deal done? And, Tony Clark now not the head of the PA, so it's going to be interesting to see if maybe that allows the players' side of it to bite. Maybe they do. It wouldn't be smart on their part, but maybe, who knows? Who knows? Maybe the owners look at this as an opportunity to kind of get more of what they want between the two sides. So, again, we're still very far away from that. We're still, almost a year away from any of that really kind of taking shape. But I think the biggest thing so far this season has been how ABS was going to look and how the players were going to kind of use it and utilize it at certain times. And I actually think that, these guys they've been hitting for, you got to figure, if you're 30, you've been playing baseball seriously for probably the last 16, 17, 18 years of your life. Like, the zone. I think that's the biggest thing, too. Not only has it been awesome that they've infused it in, and it's been so quick and seamless, it's not long. The umpires don't all meet by the dugout and take about a minute and a half, 2 minutes. I think that's the biggest thing, too, because you got to figure, it's going to build up. So if you have about 8 challenges in a game, you don't want to add another 25, 30 minutes onto the game. But I'd say the biggest thing and the most impressive thing, too, is just these guys are so good at it. There were a lot of, I've been watching, when I watched a couple of those games in the Seattle series, there were a lot, where Rice challenged, Jazz challenged one of them. I believe Stanton challenged the other, where I'm thinking, all right, they're challenging, they may be wrong. Like that looked like a strike. And I see it and it just misses. Like these guys, I think pitchers have been a little bit more hesitant. And I think, the reason for that is because A, they have the catcher to frame it. And then B, they're not close to the delivery of the pitch. Like they deliver, but they're still 60 feet away. So, and then there's also a lot that factors in with the pitcher where, a lot of times where they finish, sometimes they're not looking at the pitch when they finish after their delivery. Sometimes they're looking at the ground or their head kind of moves away. So there's a lot at play there where it's like, they don't really, and I definitely think that while pitchers still have some autonomy and while pitchers I still think have the ability to challenge it if they feel it's a strike, I definitely think they're the ones where they've kind of deferred a little to the catcher because I think they realize the catcher is going to be the one that's seeing it. They're not. So, but I do definitely think that has been what I've noticed most in this season. And, it's kind of allowed for some, just honesty with these umpires. And I think that while the umpires maybe aren't the biggest fans of it, you got to realize that in this business, you're just trying to win. And you try to win by getting any edge as possible. And it kind of allows for that to take place. And it allows for a hitter to keep an at-bat going and for a pitcher to maybe keep an at-bat going for his sake as well. But I wanted to shift gears here to kind of wrap up this show. And I wanted to touch on the Mets because, last season, kind of weird, where they didn't make the playoffs, but Alonso hit and so did Soto. And while Lindor wasn't 2024, it was still a productive season. So you had Freddie Peralta, and then you had Bo Bichette, and you had Luis Robert, and you had Marcus Semien. You're kind of thinking, there's maybe some more veteran presence. But the problem is, Luis Robert, maybe not the greatest defensive outfielder. Marcus Semien was not good with Texas last season, and he's getting older. You're playing Jorge Polanco at a position he's not accustomed to at first base. Bo Bichette, not accustomed to playing third. And I look at this offense, and while there are a lot of new faces, and they had a really good series, their opening series against Pittsburgh, I look at this team, and there were some moves there in the offseason. It kind of, I questioned why, like Marcus Semien, he's old and expensive and not incredibly productive. I looked at the move getting Bo Bichette, and while the deal is not big, like that's the team that just won the AL pennant said, we don't want you. And he's a good hitter. And when he's on, he is a very good hitter. I mean, he's had one bad year in his career, and he's been playing since 2019. One bad year in his career at the plate. So there is a lot to like with him at the plate. But the problem is with Bichette, sometimes he does have a tendency to go into a rut. The swing could kind of get a little weird looking and a bit loopy. But the biggest concern with him has been third base. What are you really going to get from him at third? That's not a position he's used to. He doesn't really have a ton of range. And it's going to be interesting to see how this season progresses because outside, really, when you actually boil it down, outside of Juan Soto, who really is the hitter in this lineup that can give you consistent offense? I don't know if that exists. I just don't really know if that exists. Like Francisco Lindor can be a table setter, but who's the hitter in this lineup that is, if Soto goes through a rut or if Soto misses some time with this injury that he's dealing with now, who's going to be that offensive player in the middle of the lineup or even at the top of the lineup that can give you a spark when you need it? Is it going to be Robert? Is it going to be Bichette? Is it Lindor? Lindor is more of the table setter, but he's probably still the second best hitter on that team behind Soto. But over in the offseason, he was dealing with hamate issues. So I believe he got surgery on it. This was back in February. So he didn't miss any time, but, you have to kind of figure, is he going to be the one that could step up? That's kind of the issue. That's kind of, where, while this team is new and it's still very early into this season, it was Pete Alonso last year. He's now in Baltimore. So who's going to be that player if it is not Juan Soto? Who's going to be the guy that's going to give you some offense behind him? Or when he's struggling or if he misses time? I don't know if they have that player. I really don't. But still very early into this season, so we'll see how it plays out. Thank you for listening to The Tom Hill Show. We'll be back next Monday from 10 to 11. Stay tuned for more of the biggest hits and best variety on the Princeton Review's 18th ranked best college radio station. 3-time 2026 IBS Media Award winner and 5-time NAB Marconi Radio Award nominee for College Radio Station of the Year. 107.7 The Bronx.
107.7 The Bronx. WRRC-FM. Lawrenceville, New Jersey. You listen and we give back. That's what 107.7 The Bronx is all about. Our annual event, the Excellent Egg Hunt, is about making our community stronger.